sisters, again, welcome this evening to tonight's How to series. Indeed, it promises to be a great night, and we are grateful for that. Um, he should be here with us in a second. Um, Tonight's session is on emotional intelligence for Christian living, and I guess if you had read a bit of the synopsis, you'll be very interested in emotional intelligence because in the workplace, I think if you work with a huge organization, you might have had the opportunity to have some training on emotional intelligence. But in fact, as the speaker tried to educate me on it, he said to me, 90% of people who are really high performers in their home and in their marital relationships and also at work, 90% of these people absolutely absolutely have a great understanding of emotional intelligence and use it to a high standard. So wait a minute. The speaker is saying the link is not working. I will just send it to him again and let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask here. Um, I've just sent it to him. Hopefully, he will be able to join in a second. So, anyway, I was saying that 90% of people who are able to function really well in all these scenarios I've described have it's because they are really emotionally intelligent. And I guess the Bible tells us that in James 1:19 that my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Being emotionally intelligent is really important because for as long as you are emotionally intelligent about certain things um, and following through with all these things, you should have a great relationship with people around you and so on. He should be here in a minute. I think he is here. Um, well, this evening we have, let me just make him a co-host. We have with us Mr. Edem Senanu, and Uncle Edem has been with us a few times, so some of you might definitely know him. So his name actually is Mr. Kwame Edem Senanu, and he's a management and development consultant. He's a presiding elder for Legon Interdenominational Church. If you live in Ghana, you know about LIC. If you've gone through Legon campus, you might know about LIC too. He's the chairman for Advocates for Christ Ghana. He's a committed Christian, and he's married to his wonderful wife, Monica Senanu, and they have two lovely daughters, Ajua and Nanekia Senanu. He's passionate about promoting discipleship and focusing on people becoming very Christ-like. So Uncle Adam is here. We are really grateful to have him. He's a very busy man, but we thank God to have this opportunity to have him here just to teach us a few things. And I am definitely sure, sisters, you are going to be blessed by it. Absolutely blessed by it. So without much ado, I will welcome Uncle Adam. Adam, you are welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And
we
good
are.
evening to everyone.
Good evening, Uncle Adam.
Okay. So apologies first for coming in late. I just jumped off a Twitter hard group program where I was a panelist. But this evening we are absolutely privileged to be here to speak to you about a topic that for many years I use as key capacity building content for corporate entities. And the more I've done it, the more I have recognized that once again, all this really is just a reflection of what God expects of us. I trust that you've already had your opening prayer, but let me just say a quick prayer and then I will put up my slides. There's a lot to be covered. I usually do this as 3 2-hour sessions. So 2 hours, 2 hours. In fact, originally it was 3 full days, two and a half. And then COVID, one of the corporate entities challenged me whether I could do it in shorter. I know it was APSA, and I thought it was impossible. I ended up with 6 hours, 3 hours. But today, I'm going to try and bring it down to maybe 1.5, I don't know, or less. So let's see what the Lord will do. Shall we pray? Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, thank you so much for the privilege of sharing with other people. Thank you that this evening we want to look at a topic that helps us to be much better in terms of our love for people around us, even as we reflect our love for you. I pray that your Spirit will grant deep understanding to everyone gathered here, that will leave here with things that we can do in order that our relationships will be improved. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen.
Okay. So I hope I've been given permission.
Yes, please. I've made you co-host, Uncle Adam.
All right. So emotional intelligence for Christian living. And I'm going to try and do this in about 11 bits. There are other sections I had to take out. I had to try and figure out what's the best coverage I can give. So we'll look at what is an emotion. We'll look at characteristics of emotions, difference between emotions and feelings, 6 examples of basic emotions, key considerations why emotions are important and we should take it seriously, leading to impact of emotions. I'll look at a case study research that was done that highlights the critical nature of emotional intelligence. I'll talk about delayed gratification, which is a key component of being emotionally intelligent. I'll talk about instant gratification. Use the iceberg theory to explain why, again, this is so important. And then end with some 5 key elements of being emotionally intelligent. So this is the journey we want to take this evening. And then after that, if you have questions, I'll take them as well. So what are emotions? Nanaya, is this set up as interactive, or I am supposed to speak, and at the end of it, people ask questions?
As you want, Uncle Adam. Please.
Okay, so let me, yeah, for those of us who do training, interaction is always good. Let me, at least for the beginning, get some interaction. Let me hear your thoughts. People, just raise your hands and tell me what your definition for emotion is, or what emotions are. I'm looking out for a few voices. And every answer is right, like we say in training. Every answer is right. So don't be afraid.
You've got Miso, I think. Miso has unmuted to speak.
Okay. Miso,
I
tell us.
apologize. I just logged on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, is it the same for general manager as well? Okay, they also just logged on. Sisters, please, Uncle Adam wants a little bit of interaction to start with. If you can kindly answer his first question, we'll be
I'll try.
Thank you.
I'll try. What are emotions? I think emotions are what we feel when we're going through any kind of experience. So when you're scared, or when you're happy, or when you're angry, those are the emotions that you're feeling during something that is happening at that particular moment.
Okay. What we feel when we're going through a set of events, situations, circumstances. Thank you very much for setting the ball rolling. Anybody else? How would you define emotions? I thought I saw Rachel unmute. Did you give up so easily? Or there are new people joining, perhaps there are new people.
I'm glad that we've got some comments, and it says emotions, experience, motions, and then somebody has written strong feelings one feels as a result of their circumstances or interaction with others. So those are the two comments in that have been typed up.
Okay. Emotions and strong feelings that people feel. Okay. I see Tracy.
Yes, please, Uncle Adam. So I also think they are reactions to events or experience. So how we react to things that happen to us.
Okay, reactions to events. I think that many of the keywords have come up. How you feel during a circumstance or situation, reactions to events, feelings as you go through things. These are all keywords in respect of...
I've got 4 more if you want them.
Okay, go ahead.
Responses we make towards external stimuli. Emotions are expressions of what one feels. A person's reaction with their circumstances. Any strong feeling as of joy, sorrow, or fear. And that's it.
All right, so I think that some are even sounding very much like my textbook definition. So I think there are a few very knowledgeable people here too as well. Emotional and emotions and emotional intelligence. So let me give you what I'll call my basic position on what emotions are. An emotion is a sudden, spontaneous, intense desire to react or respond to stimuli. And these stimuli could be internal or external, something you're feeling within yourself or as a result of something happening in your environment. But typically, that sudden desire, sudden, usually intense desire to react or respond. And when we talk about emotional intelligence, the choice between a reaction and a response is important. We say that emotionally intelligent people respond. We don't react. A reaction is when it's uninformed, you just blurt it out, you just do it. But a response usually is informed. It takes some time to appreciate what the issues really are before you respond to that stimuli. So an emotion is that sudden, spontaneous, intense desire, sudden or spontaneous. So you can say a sudden, intense desire or a spontaneous, intense desire to react or respond to stimuli. And if I expanded it, usually that response will be directed at somebody or something. Somebody has done something and you are responding or reacting. Something has happened. So that response is usually targeted or directed at someone or something. So a sudden intense desire to do something, react, respond to somebody, to something that is going on. And that's an emotion, that desire. And we will make a distinction between emotions and feelings pretty soon. And then you get to understand it a little more. So what are the characteristics of emotions? Something that will help us appreciate what this is about. We've already talked about how it is a desire targeted at someone or something. We've also described that typically there's a specific event or person or something happening internally in your body, biological system. Usually it's something brief, seconds or minutes that has happened, and it's triggering that response or reaction. And even the response or reaction ordinarily is expected to be brief. And so when that reaction or response begins to be for very long hours, we think that it may be problematic. And it may not be that you are experiencing just one emotion. It could be a kaleidoscope, a variety of emotions. But some people can actually feel happy and sad at the same time. For example, you have a child who has graduated, is going to secondary school or university and is leaving home. You are happy and proud, but also sad you're going to miss the person. You can have specific but numerous emotions being felt at the same time. So there's a football match, your team has won. Some people are jumping, some people are smiling, others are teary. Different reactions to the same thing. People can feel different things. And emotions could be accompanied by distinct facial expressions. There are people who wear their emotions on their sleeves, so to speak, but there are others who they are not showing anything, emotionless. And you cannot figure out the construct of their minds or what they are plotting to do to you next. So it could be, but it's not always that people's emotions are reflected on their facial expressions. And so that's important. Now, from a very technical point of view, emotions are not the same as feelings. So those of us whose definitions had an emotion is a feeling, if you're dealing with it from psychology or psychiatry or medicine or the sciences, it will not be exactly the same. Emotions are different from feelings. They are connected, but not the same. We say that feelings are the responses to different emotions. So very soon I'll be showing you the emotion chain, where stimuli lead to emotions and emotions lead to feelings. So whilst emotions are our reactions or responses to stimuli, so as I've put there, stimuli trigger emotions. Emotions then lead to feelings. Now, don't worry about how complex it sounds. I'll simplify it by the time I'm done. And so this is what it looks like. The stimuli, either internal in you or external to you, trigger particular emotions, and those emotions lead to feelings. And so from that diagram, we would say that emotions are first-level reactions or responses to stimuli, whilst feelings are second-level reactions or responses. The sciences say that feelings tend to be subjective, so they differ a lot from one person to another, but emotions are reportedly more objective. But in real life, the truth of the matter is that there's such a thin line between emotions and feelings, feelings and emotions, that in practice, these words are used interchangeably. And most people who are speaking about emotions may be describing feelings, and feelings, emotions. It doesn't really matter. The more important thing is that stimuli are leading to some desire. Stimuli internally or externally are leading you to a particular intense desire, how we manage or not manage that intense desire to act, to react, or to respond is what we are talking about. Ultimately, that is what this whole topic of emotions is about, that there's a certain stimuli. It is triggering a certain intense desire. How we manage those intense desires, which could be split seconds, microseconds, is what makes the difference between people who are more successful at relationships than others. And that's what we are talking about this evening. So again, the research shows that people tend to respond to emotions differently. Remember that emotions usually will be described as the more objective part, and their response is usually based on their growing up context. So somebody grew up in a military home where everything was clockwork, and father doesn't smile, mother doesn't smile, so their countenance is always, straight. And you think they don't have emotions. They have emotions, but their growing up context has determined for them certain behaviors or responses. In summarizing this part of the emotions and feelings, because we use them interchangeably, it's not really important. What is important is that you remember that they are stimuli, and how you manage the desires that are triggered is what is crucial. Now, historically, there's a gentleman called René Descartes, who is called the founder of modern philosophy, who identified what we call 6 basic emotions. And that was many years ago. Now we've expanded the emotions to cover much more. In those days, it was just happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, surprise. But now emotions, many more, much more, many more emotions than these 6 are things that we feel and that we express and that we need to manage. What are the key considerations? So from a conflict, and I'm going to speak to this from conflict resolution research, then speak to it from a medical point of view, just to draw the same conclusion. And then finally, later I'll use the iceberg theory, which is from psychology. But from conflict resolution research, which is research done in war zones, conflict zones, where one wanted to do a drill down and identify what was the root cause of this war. So what was the root cause of the Guinea Fowl War in the north? What was the cause of the battle, the disagreement in that corporate entity and its downfall? Research taking several cases of conflict and wars has shown that 87% of the time, the reasons why people believe that other people took particular actions, 87% of the time they are wrong. When the investigations were done to establish the root cause, what started the disagreement, 87% of the time, the assumptions about why they did this or that situation happened or that event happened or didn't happen, the people who were reacting were wrong. That translates to 9 out of 10 times. And let me say this again. This statistic is based on global research on wars and conflicts. And the global research suggests that 87% of the time, which is 9 out of 10 times, why the first person, why Mr. B or Madam B reacted to Mr. A, thinking that Mr. A's comment meant this, or Mr. A's refusal to do something meant that. When Mr. A was contacted and interviewed and, engaged fully, the reasons were different. Now, that's a key consideration. What it's suggesting is that 9 out of 10 times, wars and battles have been waged on faulty assumptions, mainly triggered by an emotional reaction. There was an intense desire because somebody did something happened, and your reaction to it, that intense desire to do something, 9 out of 10 times. It's almost like saying 10 out of 10 times. 9 out of 10 times, the root reason was wrong. And so this is a key consideration why we should be talking about this topic in the first place. And I'll spend some time on it because I want the statistic to hit you. And I want you to start inquiring, how have I reacted to things? In my sessions with senior management, mainly in the banking sector and other sectors, it's amazing how every time I take people through this, people, they say, so that's why in secondary school, this thing happened to me, in university, and the stories that people have told from women who've left their babies because they are angry with their husband to drive from one part of Accra to the other part, only to come back. And and on their way, the husband is calling her and she won't pick the phone because she's angry. And the whole thing started because the husband is asking for a pen drive and she felt she's left that pen drive with a colleague who is in Tema and she's in Kaswa. So she's driving from Kaswa to Tema at 7 p.m. and the husband is calling her, she'll not pick the phone. Why? Because she's upset and not knowing that the husband has found the pen drive. The pen drive he was looking for has been found. She won't even pick the phone. She comes back and baby is crying, husband is marching up and down, baby crying. He says, I found the pen drive. Strange stories. Or the student whose heart's desire was to get a new laptop. The one who was recollecting his childhood, where he was a student, he was hoping to get a laptop. His mother was in the US. And what happens? He comes home from school one day, he finds a brand new laptop with his brother's name on it on the dining hall table, and he's upset because he had sent his mom a message earlier saying, I need a laptop. Comes to his sister and he's upset. Mommy doesn't love me. How could she do? So he goes to his room, he's mopping, and then he sends a text. Those days we didn't have WhatsApp. That he didn't know she didn't love him like that. That he's active a lot. His brother sent a laptop to my brother. And then a few hours later, big brother comes home from work, comes to look for him in the room. Says, have you seen the laptop in the dining room? He said, Mommy sent it to you. She put it in my name. That's your. And now he's wondering, what do I do? I've sent the text to my mom already. Emotional intelligence. Managing emotions is therefore extremely crucial. 9 out of 10 times demands that. And the Bible underscores this whole thing about emotional intelligence and managing emotions in various places over and over again. I picked just 2 here. James 1:19 and Ephesians 4:26-27. I think 26 is okay. Now, in James 1:19, James tells us, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. In other words, that intense desire before the person has finished their statement to speak is not the way to go. To jump in and say something, to react. The Bible says that what we ought to be is slow to speak and even slower to become angry. If you looked at verse 20 to say, because the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So working yourself up into anger, whatever it is, it does not satisfy the righteousness of God. That is not what God requires of you. If you look at the Ephesians 4:26, it says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. It's trying to suggest that even anger, so I've taken from James, be slow to become angry. And then in Ephesians, it says that even if you get angry, it has to be controlled anger, measured. Controlled anger, measured anger. An anger that does not lead you to do something violent and then you kill someone, or, an anger that is measured, that is managed, that's under control. I could call it in quotes a righteous anger. And there are the texts in the Bible where you see judge not. And the judge not is repeated several times. Forgive. All these things about patience, perseverance. It's talking about the management of emotions. All the things you see in Galatians 5:22-23. Okay? Or in Colossians 3 from verse 5. All the virtues. Or 2 Peter 1 from verse 10. Pursuing patience, kindness, gentleness, all the way up to self-control. All those texts are about managing emotions and putting away some negative emotions whilst holding on to some positive emotions. That's what the text is about. And so emotional intelligence, EI, has become essential because of the knowledge that has been discovered through research about how 87% of the time, most of the time, why we react to situations, we are wrong. And you can imagine if you are wrong, the other person then feels offended, feels hurt, and the situation just escalates. It doesn't become better. There is therefore a need to take a look at our growing up context and the people we were in school with. You find that those who were touted as having high IQs versus those who had emotional intelligence to the extent that they were the friendly ones, they networked well, they connected well. If you look at it and you had data, you would find that often it is not those who had the high IQs and were topping the class that actually, after 10, 20 years, are the captains of industry, at the top of their sectors, of their craft, and are the movers and shakers of society. If you had time to think through your class of whichever, 74, 85, 93, you name it, you are likely going to discover that, again, the data on emotional intelligence is right. That it's not those with the high IQs who after 20, 30 years are the movers and shakers. Usually, it is those who demonstrated emotional intelligence in terms of how they manage situations. And a key part of that is what we'll be talking about soon, called delayed gratification. This concept of, therefore, being emotionally intelligent, not being reactive to situations, has implications for all of us. At 9 out of 10 times, it has severe and critical implications. In your workplaces where things happen and you immediately react, in your homes where things happen between you and your partner, your spouse, and you immediately react, or your children, without doing a further engagement, and we would say in communication, clarify. Without that effort to clarify and get additional information so that you are adequately informed, and then you respond, the likelihood is that you'll be creating unnecessary tension, unnecessary antagonism, and ruining and burning bridges when you ought not to. Let me, from a medical perspective, also highlight why this discussion on being emotionally intelligent is key. There are a number of things that result from not managing your emotions. One of them, we call it rumination. Rumination is where, like a ruminant that has four chambers in the stomach. And so when they take the grass, they chew it, move from one chamber to the next, until they've taken all the nutrients out. Rumination is like you keep recycling, keep chewing on a situation. So perhaps somebody got upset with you, your boss, your supervisor, and said something you didn't like. And you begin to ruminate because beyond that period of the 5 minutes where it happened, for the next 2 hours, you are still ruminating on the situation. You are distracted. You are just reliving what happened and how you didn't like it, or how you were embarrassed, or how, And usually what happens is that the biochemical balances, hormonal balances in your system begin to change. Certain hormones go up. In the case of rumination, it's been found to be cortisol. And increased cortisol leads to, over a long period, leads to clinical depression. So for the person who is ruminating, reliving and going through that, anguish of the situation over and over again, it leads to depression. And not just that, we find that when you are ruminating, you are not focused. You don't have attention. You are distracted. So your cognitive ability goes down. Your ability to articulate issues is weakened. It's one of the reasons why rumination and also anger, when you are angry, for example, somebody did something, you were in the right, and people come and they ask you what happened. The person who upset you sometimes is able to articulate issues better than you. Why? At that point of being angry or ruminating over it, the increase in certain hormones makes it difficult for you to be cognitively sharp. So you can't even express yourself. Now, if you manage your emotions, you would be calm enough to be able to articulate what the person did wrong. But because your emotions have gotten out of control, even though you are right, and that's even double, what I call it, double jeopardy. Not only have you been annoyed, but now that you have opportunity to explain to people around, you can't even speak. You can't make sense out of what transpired. You can't explain it as well as you ought. Data also from medical sciences shows that, again, emotions, especially anger, leads to high blood pressure, cardiovascular diseases, and digestive disorders. Somebody is ending up in the hospital every week, and they are trying all these drugs, spending a lot of money, and sometimes it's just simply a problem. And it's triggering hormonal changes, biochemical changes. And that's the thing about emotions. Emotions always lead to certain biochemical changes, and the heightened presence of those chemicals in your system or hormones in your system leads to challenges. And we know that when we are very angry, sometimes you can break something when you are angry, and you have a cut, you don't even feel it. That's a reduction in the sense of touch. Data also shows that emotions like anger, chronic anger, can lead to colds, flus, asthma, skin rashes, which repeat themselves, they perpetuate themselves, they seem like they are never going. And in some cases, especially in women, it has been found that repressed anger leads to cancer. Particularly, there's been a connection found in some cases with breast cancer. So I've talked from the conflict resolution data. I've talked from the medical data. I'm trying to tell you that you have every reason to take this topic seriously and see what you're doing about managing emotions before you start blaming the witches and the wizards in your family. Let me proceed to share a little bit from Professor Daniel Goleman's research. There were forerunners before him who studied this, but he's the one who popularized it the most. And I want to read a bit from one of the things he says in his book on emotional intelligence. And so he indicated that IQ offers little to explain the different destinies of people with roughly equal promises, schooling, and opportunities. In a survey of 95 Harvard students from the 1940s, at a time when people with a wider spread of IQs were in Ivy League schools than is presently the case, when they were tracked into their middle ages, the students with the highest test scores in college were not particularly successful compared with their lower scoring peers. And this was in terms of their salary, their productivity, their relationships, their respective fields of work. And so at the end of the day, it didn't look like IQ had made a difference. And a similar study of another 450 boys, again, showed that IQ had little relationship with the ability to handle frustrations, to get on with people, and rather, it was the ability to control emotions and relate to people that made the most difference. In another study of the 1981 class of Illinois High School, those with the highest grade point averages were tracked into later life. While they continued to achieve well in college and so from secondary to, let's say, primary to secondary and to even university, by their late 20s, they appeared to have only achieved an average level of achievement or success. 10 years after graduating, only 25% of those who were at their highest level, compared with young people of their age in their chosen profession, only 25% of those were at the highest level. Many more, so that would be like 75%, were doing much less well. Now, the conclusion, therefore, is that high IQs, excellent achievements, tells us nothing really about how people will cope in later life to what goes on when they enter the market space. And so the conclusion they drew from their study was that academic intelligence offers virtually no preparation for the frustrations or turmoil or opportunities life will bring. And that much more so, the evidence suggests that people who are emotionally adept, emotionally competent, who know how to manage their feelings as well as the feelings of other people around them, and therefore can deal with these people, these are the ones who have a greater advantage and appear to be much more successful in all domains of life. So just to put that in context, I think that I've made a very strong case for emotional intelligence. Now, at the heart of emotional intelligence is something we call delayed gratification. And this is the process you go through when you resist the temptation of an immediate action or reward in preference for a later one. So there's a stimuli that is tempting you to act. There's a stimuli that is triggering an intense desire to do something immediately, so that you feel good, so that you feel that you have spoken back, so that I'm not a nobody. that, oh, I'm also wise or intelligent, or I can also do it, resisting that temptation to immediately take an action is what we are talking about when we say delayed gratification. And it's an important part of being emotionally intelligent. At the heart of being emotionally intelligent, just simply that simple act of being able to restrain yourself from immediately speaking or acting or doing something. Hold on a little until you get some more information and advice, until you get perspective, until you get your emotions under control. That's being emotionally intelligent. And I'll simplify it further by saying that at the heart of emotional intelligence is delayed gratification, being the ability to resist the temptation to immediately react to stimuli. The ability to resist the temptation to immediately react to stimuli. And if there's anything I want you to keep in mind, it is this. And for those of us Christians, we have no excuse, because part of the mechanism of God to help us get there is the Holy Spirit. And Ephesians 1:11 tells us that when we first heard and believed, he gave us a deposit as a seal, the promised Holy Spirit, as an eternal inheritance. It is the Holy Spirit that guarantees that we enjoy eternal inheritance. The Holy Spirit that helps us with these things. So the ability to resist the temptation to immediately react to stimuli is what we are talking about when we talk about emotional intelligence. Now, we started out earlier by saying that emotions are a sudden or spontaneous intense desire to do something or to react to something. Emotions are therefore impulses or desires to act. And I'm trying to break it down so that you can run with it. An emotion is simply an impulse to act, a desire to react. For example, the impulse of fear, the desire, you feel fear and you want to stop, or fear, you want to run, or anger, you want to shout, or anger, you want to slap. There's an impulse. You experience that impulse and you want to act. The ability to resist this impulse and delay the action of acting by pausing is called delayed gratification. Pause. Putting a pause between that impulse and your action. Putting a pause, putting a delay between that trigger and your reaction is what we are calling delayed gratification. Now, delayed gratification, and it's called delayed gratification because, you see, for human beings, that intense desire to act is because we want to immediately feel like I've shown that I'm right. I have demonstrated that I'm not wrong, I'm right. I know what I'm talking about. If he insulted me, I also insulted him back, There's that is a gratification, it's a pride issue. Sometimes often it's about satisfaction. And we're saying delay the satisfaction of I immediately spoke, I immediately cleared it, I immediately got my rights, and make sure you've understood the issue much better before you do so. So delaying gratification ensures that your passion, and passion can be extreme, does not override reason. Delayed gratification ensures that we respond from a position of information, and we do not react purely because of emotion. Delayed gratification is especially crucial in our relationships and in persevering to overcome life's challenges. The reason why James 1:19 will say, be slow to speak. Be slow. Do not be quick to speak. Be slow. Be slow. Slow down. You know, don't rush. It makes a lot of difference in relationships. If 9 out of 10 times why we think our husband or our wife did something or did not do something, we are wrong. And we don't make the effort to investigate what the issues are. We don't have the patience, nor are willing to express, make the effort to then just ask 1 or 2 questions to try and dig to the bottom of it. The likelihood is that we're going to take an action, say things, do things that will just complicate issues and pour more oil on the fire, or petrol or fuel on the fire. So learning to put that pause, learning to delay your gratification is crucial. On the other hand, most of us grow up to acting immediately. And so people are speaking and we want to immediately speak. I mean, it says something, I feel that's wrong, so I must talk. Instant gratification. I must let him know, I must let her know I'm right, or what you're saying is wrong. And we are not able to manage our emotions. Usually it's for your personal benefit, your personal satisfaction. You said, but that's how I am. We actually need to know that in some instances, yes, instant actions and gratification can be useful. So if there's a real danger or risk of a disaster, for example, somebody has crossed your car, you're driving, you need to step on the brake. So that's an instant action. And so there are those situations. But in most of our situations, when it comes to relationships, there is a great value and premium on delaying your responses, or should I say rather your reactions, so that you don't add fuel to the fire. So in relationships, when we react or take instant actions to satisfy our emotions, usually what it is that they are uninformed. Uninformed to the extent that you haven't asked the additional questions. You haven't bothered to find out why he or she is doing A or B. And often it just makes much more complicated the situation. And then the resolution doesn't come. The opportunity to bridge the gap, to mend the relationship is ruined. However, if you choose to respond, which means that you delay gratification, you make a pause, you tell yourself, I'm not going to react. I shall wait until he finishes speaking, until she finishes speaking, and I'll ask more questions. You'll find that it is much more informed, much more well thought through. And so what you will say, how you say it, your choice of words are all calculated, and they bring out a better result. Truth be told, those who make it in the corporate life and elsewhere are usually because everybody else sees this person as more matured, more measured, more able to listen. When I pick from my leadership training slides, study of the top corporate leadership people shows that the #1 skill is those who are able to listen. The most important interpersonal skill is those who have an attentive listening ear. And it serves a lot of benefits. One, because they learn to listen well, they are much more informed. They are wiser because they're listening to everyone and picking nuggets of gold and facts and enriching themselves. And by the time they're taking a decision, they are bringing on board the knowledge and experiences of the wealth of people around them. They are listening. Very key for leadership. And it's the same thing here. And indirectly, probably without us consciously identifying it subconsciously, the people we choose for leadership are the people who we know will listen to us. They're the ones who will be patient, calm, measured, but able to take the right decisions. And we know they'll promote our best interest. So every reason to choose to respond rather than react. Every reason to pause and ask more questions and be informed. Several factors can affect your ability to delay gratification. The research has shown that parents who give their children everything they ask for, they nurture a culture of instant gratification. So watch it. One of the most important skills, obviously, we won't be having this discussion if it were not, is EI, if not the most important skill. And when you train your child to work towards targets, so the Christmas gift doesn't just come because it's Christmas, or the new shoe, or the new phone, but they work towards it and they learn that you don't get things instantly because you ask for it. And then we have a generation who think that, oh, I struggled or my parents struggled, I don't want my children to struggle. But the truth of it is that actually, the most important thing in childhood is that children learn to work for things. That they don't just get things because they ask for it. Because when you do that, what you have done for them is to get them a culture of instant gratification. So they get used to that. And many of them, when they grow up and get into real life situations where they can't get what they want immediately, they think everybody around them hates them. And many of the people in my sessions have said that. And typically also relates to people who are very high, have high IQ. Because you see, the high IQ people, you are topping the class, you are getting the awards. So you think that your IQ will give you everything immediately. Then they get into a real life situation where their IQ is not getting them everything, and they think that people hate them. And then they recoil into themselves. They move away from being very, relational. And people don't understand. It's one of the reasons why you find high IQ people ending up in academia and research, because then they are by themselves. All they need to do is to read and understand and talk about that. But with people, when issues come up, they can't deal with them because the fact that they've spoken intelligently doesn't give them the promotion, and they can't deal with that. And so you have people who move from one school to another school. In my school, I was first. This new school, I am now fourth, fifth, and all the first three are all girls. And I think, no, it's the teacher. The teacher likes the girls. And then he drops out of school. And I'm talking about real life situations. And then they advise him. He loses a year or two. He comes back, and he's only understanding what happened to him 25 years later in an emotional intelligence class. You have somebody who is a deputy head of a bank, and his boss is a lady, and then some other person can say that she said this about you, and he's so upset because of all the things he did for her, has been doing for her, and so he resigns. He has not bothered to engage her to find out whether she actually said it or not. And she reaches out to him. He resigns, go to another bank for a lower position, lower pay, but I'm just happy that she doesn't value me, because he felt so hurt. And when I asked him, did you ever? I said, no, she reached out to me, but I refused to answer. And he's sitting there thinking, and he's now saying, but I now realized I made a mistake. Don't ruin the future of your children by just giving them everything. You want them to be comfortable. This world requires tough-minded children who learn that life is about getting around hurdles. It doesn't come easy. And how you help to set targets for them and help them to work towards those targets. They don't get things always just on a silver platter. Will prepare them much better to be successful. So students who easily do well academically, winning laurels, often get used to instant gratification because I'm intelligent, I'll get it. I often give the example of my second daughter who from class 1 to about class 5, class 6. So it's first. Then in class 6 or so, she was second or third, and it was a disaster. I mean, every year I'll talk to all the teachers, go through all the books. And on the way back, I realized she was down, but I didn't know how bad it was. We got home and she just went to her room, and for the next 2-3 days, she was just crying because she's no longer first. And then it occurred to my wife and I that we have to help her not to be first all the time, because she can't get used to the idea that she's not first, you know. So we kind of just expanded her scope to do other things. And then when it came to final year BC, they pushed her again. And God being so good, I mean, she was together with another lady that two top the school. But we push our children without understanding the implications. And I'm just highlighting this for you to appreciate that. That is not necessarily the best way to approach it. Now, students who do not do so well academically, but they need to work harder, somehow that whole experience makes them much better prepared for life. And the thing is not to say that those who are doing well, stop them from doing well, but make sure that you are finding other ways of ensuring that they get life's lessons, that things don't always come easy. Otherwise, they have a skewed impression of life and they cannot fit well into society later. It clearly has implications for our workplaces, our homes, our children, and keep that in mind. Now, let me talk a little bit about psychology to explain a little more why this discussion this evening is important. And then I'll get into the 5 tools I want you to keep. Dr. Edward Hall, 1973, talked about the iceberg theory in psychology, where he indicated that culture, and I've added character, is made up of a visible and invisible part. So the iceberg in water, usually you have 20%, 20 to 30% of the iceberg on top of the surface, which you can see. But what you can't see, which is beneath, is 60 to 70%. Now, the people we engage in life, often what we see is their words, how they speak. If they have a tone, we hear their tone. We see their gestures or body language. And that is what we draw conclusions with. However, much more critical to the words they use, their thinking and everything, is what you don't see, which is their belief systems, the values they stand for, that have been inculcated in them over time, their biases because of what their parents said, what their religion says, their prejudices because of the same, their experiences, whether they've been in a car accident, so they don't like to sit in front of a car, or they don't want to drive, their fears because of the stories that they were told as kids, their dreams, their feelings. And emotional intelligence is important because until you have engaged an individual to understand the 80%, the 70 to 80% under the water, you will never draw the right conclusion on what he said, what she said, and why they did it. So let me give you an example. One of the branch managers of a bank, as we went through this exercise, and I talked about how our formative years makes a difference. And there's a tool I give to try and identify what is the root of how you feel. She discovered that one of the issues that creates a lot of tension between her and her staff is she calls a meeting and people don't get there 5 minutes before the meeting is supposed to start. They reason after. And as we analyzed it, it was clear that her father was a military man. Mother also was with the paramilitary, grew up in Burma camp. And their father's attitude to time was very strict. Subconsciously for her, she's grown up with that when you come in late, it's because you disrespect me. Because that was the father's posture. Father's posture was always that when you are late for something, it's because you're disrespecting me. And she didn't realize that it had become part of her subconscious. So the staff that she was having a lot of problems with were staff who were not timely. And sometimes it made her feel extremely angry and she'll have to walk out of the office. It took some of these sessions for her to identify that it's a childhood thing where she was nurtured to look at time in a particular way, and is the reason why she gets so livid and sometimes she can't even talk. So what are your childhood experiences? How have they shaped you? Until you've engaged the person and discovered that because the father was a military person and as everything is just command, don't complain, be on time. And she's carried that into the workplace. She expects you to be on time, and she expects that when she gives an instruction, it's also a command. You don't complain. And at the back of her mind, she can't understand people who want to ask more questions. That's disrespect. And so you may look at her as she's just difficult. She's like, meanwhile, if you engaged her and found out her background, how she grew up, all of a sudden, and this is somebody who, after an emotional intelligence class, there is now understanding that, but other people come from other childhood backgrounds where their parents encourage them to ask questions, encourage them that, that's the way you also contribute to society. And so that Jojo, then she's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing differently. So this slide is here so that you understand that often we still haven't yet unpacked, even for our own spouses, enough about their beliefs, their values, their prejudices. We think we know, but we have not engaged and asked them. There are things they do. Why do you do it? But if we're just to demonstrate the love that we see in the Bible, we will get some of this. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you did, you want to ask more questions, you want to engage more. Why really do you do this? Recently, I had a situation like that with one of my organizations where they were ordering, somebody wanted to order more of, what do we call it? This, what we use for the alcohol thing we use for washing hands and tables. Is like tissue. It's a name for it, I've forgotten. And this person was told that, but COVID is over, so we don't need this kind of tissue again, And she seemed insistent. Eventually, the administrator says, no, we are not doing this. And then later I decided to engage her. I said, oh, well, if the decision is no, I'll just leave it like that. And I said, well, why do you need it? And he said, well, my office, many people come in and out every day, all the time. So somehow I feel more comfortable when I use this alcohol sanitizer tissue to keep wiping my table. And, it just makes me feel comfortable. And as soon as she said it, I listened to her and I felt that that's very intelligent. But for 2 days, we had gone around these boxes of tissue and why should we buy it when COVID is over and why is she insisting, until there was the engagement. Let me now try and give you a definition of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, according to Daniel Goleman, is the ability to be aware of and to work productively with your own and others' emotions. So you need to be aware of your own emotions and work productively with your own emotions. You also need to be aware of and work productively with the emotions of others. So if you can tell you are getting angry, manage it. You can tell somebody else is getting angry, manage it. How you manage your emotions and also manage the emotions of those around you is crucial. And the truth is, according to Daniel Goleman and the research, your ability to understand and manage emotions greatly increases your chances of success in everything, including relationships, including your Christian walk. And really, that is what our Christian walk is about. If you really love your neighbor as yourself, then you do everything to understand your neighbor. You do everything to manage your emotions so that you don't create an unnecessary crisis or conflict. That is truly loving your neighbor. Being aware of your emotions, your neighbor's emotions, managing yours and theirs, so that ultimately God is glorified. I now want to talk about 5 things that will make you emotionally intelligent. And as I said, I have tried to condense what is now a 6-hour thing. I don't know how long I've taken to. Wow. So I'll try and wrap up the next maximum 10 minutes or less.
Adam, you're doing it, so don't worry about it. We are being blessed.
Okay. So being emotionally intelligent starts with understanding your own emotions, self-awareness. And I usually give people in my sessions a table. I couldn't add it to all the slides here, but we can talk about it. I give them a table. I ask them to keep a journal, an emotional journal, for 1 month, over a 30-day period. And over those 30 days, you note the days and particularly the events that trigger an emotional imbalance. So, I mean, the days where nothing happens is fine, but the days where something went off and you know you were emotionally imbalanced, that day I asked them, please, what event was it? And in that event, what specific thing was the trigger? And when you note what the trigger was, I then say, out of the trigger, try and identify why is that trigger important? What value do you hold that was offended or affected that made that thing a trigger? Because usually when we analyze ourselves, you find that trigger, that stimuli, there is a root cause for that stimuli. And often it has to do with what we hold dear, our values, our prejudices, our biases, what you find under the water. So what's the actual trigger? What's the actual root? And then what was your reaction? What could you have done better? And is there any scripture that speaks to it, especially for Christians? So I ask people to keep a journal for that for 1 month. And at the end of the month, you find that the events and triggers, especially the triggers, are very similar. They're just a particular set of things that set you off repeatedly. Once you can identify those set of things and their roots, you are on the way to managing them if you can identify them. So the journal is supposed to help you identify what are the things. The date, the event, the trigger, what was the root in terms of your values, your biases, your experiences? How did you react? How could you have reacted better? Is there any scripture that makes you think, that empowers you to do this differently? So start with understanding your own emotions. What are the things that happen? So a journal will help you do that. And that we call self-awareness. Now, after you've been able to understand what are your emotional imbalances, and particularly what are the triggers or stimuli that get you unhinged, then we want to self-regulate. We want to manage those particular emotions. So there's opportunity now you've listed them, pray about them every morning, that today, as I set out, Holy Spirit, help me so that I don't react. I remember many years back, I used to get so angry with people who cross me, motorbikes and all that, and so I applied this. Every morning I pray, Lord, help me not to react to any of this. And after 2 months, one day I just discovered that I'm not reacting to these people again. It had just disappeared. And when the point at which it disappeared, I didn't even notice. So after you've done that listing of what the issues are and you are self-aware, next is self-regulation. Pick those issues one by one, pray about them, And like we sometimes do for presentation, is you stand in front of a mirror, imagine yourself going through this situation again. How will you act differently? Think through it. Imagine yourself acting differently. Act through it. Find the scriptures, read around it, so that you are better self-regulating, and pray about it. Now, when you go through the process of trying to self-regulate and you see how you struggle, it takes a while to get over some of these things, like not shouting or getting angry at people crossing you in traffic. It leads you to empathize when you see somebody else getting unhinged in a meeting at work, or going off the handle at home or elsewhere. When you see the difficulty, how it can be challenging to manage your own emotions, because now you are self-aware, you are trying to regulate it, and it's not easy. It leads you to become more empathetic. It's a good learning experience for all of us, because then in your corporate space, in your home space, you see somebody else getting unhinged, immediately you think emotional intelligence. Then you think this person doesn't know delayed gratification and how to do a pause. And then you remember how you are struggling, and you are now in a position to share with them that this thing, don't get angry. It could be a colleague. One of the examples I give is how when you struggle, when you're the secretary to the management meeting, you do the minutes, you come. And some people who don't know how difficult it is to write minutes or reports, then they start picking at this sentence and this English word and this comma, and you are getting angry. They will not be available to help you. You have done it and they are criticized. You now learn to be empathetic, and you can then help much more others who go through that. Now, beyond empathy is, because you've gone through self-awareness and self-regulation, and you began to see change, and you understand the effort that you must apply to get the change. You are empathetic, and you can now identify people who you are motivated to help. So you are now motivated to achieve goals for yourself. You are motivated to help others also achieve goals, because between self-awareness and self-regulation and becoming empathetic, you are also seeing change in yourself. And the fact that you are changing leads you to believe, yes, it is possible. And so you are able to set more goals for yourself and also help others to set goals. So you have self-motivation when you go to self-awareness, and self-regulation is actually happening. It leads you to be empathetic, and you are motivated to help more. And finally, an emotionally intelligent person will then understand that I must acquire more skills, more social skills and other skills that help me manage my relationships. So you're on a lifelong journey of continuous learning. You don't stop trying to learn new things about how I can improve relationships, how I can help others much more. You look at gaining more social skills and deepening your relationships and your ability to influence and manage other people. And that is what makes you emotionally intelligent, that you are self-aware of your own emotions. You are working to manage your own emotions through self-regulation. And because you are doing that, you are regulated, actually not giving up. You are empathetic because you know that it takes a bit of effort, but it can be done. It leads you to being self-motivated. So you're a self-motivated person towards achieving goals of change and towards influencing others also to work towards goals of change in whatever negative emotions and reactions they have. And that ultimately you have committed yourself to continuously acquiring more skills so that your relationships are enhanced. And that's what makes you emotionally intelligent. On that note, I'll say thank you, and I think I must leave some time for questions, and we can take it from there. Back to you, Nanaya.
Thank you, Adam. Sisters, it's made me think deeply. Adam, you've made me really think deeply about even for myself, thinking about a diary to look at what triggers me and stuff. But sisters, we must say we appreciate what Adam has just done, giving us just a tip of the iceberg. I would say this iceberg only has 10%, Adam, of what you would teach normally. And we are really grateful for that. But I'm sure sisters have got questions. There was one that came up and I said I will ask when we had time. When you gave the example about high IQ not making it easier for people to be successful because of blah, a few examples you gave. One sister wrote, could it be because the end is a matter of time and chance? Do you think it's just time and chance that made these people not be successful, although they had high IQ, was the question?
Okay, so first of all, let me give a caveat. There are people who, and the data showed that about 25% of those who were top of the class were doing well. But the larger majority, 75%, were not the movers and shakers of society. Now, I'm sure if you look at Ghana today, and just look at your own class, perhaps one or two of you can share. 10, 20 years after school, who are the movers and shakers of your class? Are they the ones who are the most intelligent, top of the class? You find a few of them definitely there, but you are likely to find that the majority of those who are making waves are people who you wouldn't have had the slightest clue that these are the ones who are going to get there. Now, what the data is suggesting is that, yes, IQ, academic intelligence, is important. But much more important than that for success is your ability to relate to people. And it connects with all the other data, whether it's leadership data, whether it is marketing data, where they say networking, all the other fields of expertise you can think of will still point back to the fact that relationships are more important. One of the assets that we have as Africans is that we believe in relationships. We are communal. We believe in the extended family. Unlike the West, that it's more about self-reliance and yourself, individuality. And so that's why our year group thinks it's such a big issue and competitions are, So I think the data speaks for itself. It's not the time. It's not about chance. It's just that IQ is not enough to get you there, especially if it's about corporate mobility in terms of promotion, etc. You need more than just being intelligent. What people are looking for in terms of leadership, in terms of the management level or the senior management level, is people who can carry everybody along. You're a visionary and you know how to get everybody on board. It's not just about having a vision, but how do you get people on board? And so whether it's a Bill Gates will say, look, I just brought a lot of very smart people around me. And that's what gets you there. So bottom line, how are we teaching our children not to be individualistic, but more able to connect with other people, not to feel so full of themselves because I'm top of the class, I don't need anybody else, not to think that I can get a result simply by being intelligent, but knowing that sometimes it's hard work. And then when the hard work is thrown in your face, because they are not used to it, everything comes easy. And now someone says, no, roll up your sleeves and get to the ground. They are confused. Help our kids to know that, yes, life doesn't give it to you easy. And they're more likely when they are thrown into a situation where they have no clue, intelligence is not working, they have to get down to the ground and work, they will be willing to do so.
Thank you so much, Adam. There's another question. And it said, regarding instant gratification, the example about making kids work for Christmas gifts, to what extent should we do this? Wouldn't this affect how they relate to God, thinking that they have to work to get things from God? That's the question.
Okay, perhaps I shouldn't use Christmas as that example, because I think that Christmas is being connected with God. But yeah, you can give them your Christmas presents, but in between, when it's not something that you are likely to connect with wrong interpretation, how do you make your children appreciate that hard work has value? And perseverance is what you need to get there in the real world. How do you, so for example, it could be they are not doing too well in a particular subject, and you challenge them that if you're able to move from where you are now at 50% to 60% at the end of the year, I'll give you the book you are looking for, or I get you some shoes, something. How do you set targets and learn them to work towards those targets? How do you let them to understand that life is not just easy and so on and so forth? So we need to be intentional, and we need to be innovative. And so you can throw out the Christmas example if it's going to confuse people, and just make sure that there are ways in which we are training them not to think that everything is easy. And one of the easiest ways is just simply don't, as soon as they come and ask for something, then you buy it, you give it to them. They want to go here, take them. They want to do this. That is all instant gratification. Let them learn to know that you got to get certain things done first. So, for example, if you finish your homework, you've cleaned your room and so, then I'll consider allowing you to go and visit your friend and play. Put things in place that make it clear that there's no such thing as instant gratification that gets you there. It is more that regularly you will have to work towards things, and then their mind frame for life will be set.
Thank you, Uncle Adam. Another question is trying to yes, you've got wow, thank you from Lerato. But another question is, how do you apply this really in depth between you and your spouse? Because a lot of the people here are married women, and they want to be able to have good emotional intelligence when they are dealing with their spouses, and a few pointers to help them practically use the examples you've given.
Okay, so the practical part was the very last bit where I talked about being self-aware, then self-regulate, then empathetic, then self-motivated, and trying to gain social skills. The first thing is to work on yourself. This discipleship class I have, and anyone who joined, I think yes, some other year or two ago, I did. I don't know what the topic was, and I said that usually when I have to counsel spouses, my first step is wear your oxygen mask. Wear your oxygen mask. And I've learned that, so I've been counseling for probably about 20 years, maybe 22. And I've learned that the first thing that help the person come to themselves first, make sure that their needs have been catered for. So I say, wear your oxygen mask before you put on the oxygen mask of other people. What is it that you are lacking? How is that you are feeling? Let's deal with you first as a person. Get you, feeling okay. And normally, as part of that, I'll say you just focus on God. Somehow, our construct of life is about our husbands, our children, and all the other issues. But truly, ultimately, God's design of this world is not about our spouses and our children and our work. No, it's about becoming like Him, God. He created us for fellowship with Him in the Garden of Eden. And when we fell, this whole thing of whether it's discipleship, of the challenges we face, They are all tailor-made, custom-made to help us begin to identify that we are nothing and we are weak without God, and to fall back on him so he helps us. And through this process to become more like Christ before we die and exit. It's all about becoming like Christ. And so Ephesians 4 verse 13 will say, until we attain the full measure of the stature of Christ. It's all about forming Christ in us. And that is about our vertical. So the first thing is, rather than seeing all the weaknesses in your husband or in your wife or your children, is identify the weaknesses in yourself, looking in the mirror of the Bible of God, reflecting and saying, I'll work on myself. And somehow God's design is that when you begin to focus on your weaknesses, what you're doing wrong, and allowing God to work on you, he takes care of the rest. Vertical first before horizontal. So my first step is wear your oxygen mask. Deal with your own issues. Identify your weaknesses. And that is why self-awareness of what is it that you're overreacting, and always it's overreaction. I've quite a number of people I've worked with over the past. It's been 100% every time I have helped, and it's always more of the women than the men, even though the men have problems. But the women are the ones who actually avail themselves to try and get through this. And my first step is always, you are here first and foremost about you. Deal with yourself and your weaknesses, what you are doing wrong. When you see clearly what it is that's not working, you work at it. Then you find that you will now be in a position to understand much better how to help others, including your spouse, etc. And then it puts you in a position where you are able to much better harness the power of God for change. Your prayers become more effective. It becomes a James 1:16, I believe, the righteous prayer, effective fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Because as you work on yourself, somehow those your prayers become much more powerful. And that man who is never at home, suddenly is showing up at home, and you are trying to figure out, now what changed? What changed? You changed. So that's the first step. Focus on yourself. Focus on just obeying the word of God, becoming more Christ-like. And then at a stage, you then move into, sometimes these issues are about spiritual warfare. The fact that he's not listening to you, he's not understanding you. The enemy does these things. Sometimes he places things, it could be curses, and so things have happened. But the more you focus on God, he's able to open your eyes to see, to understand, to pray aright, and you see that situations will change. So that's where I'll say you start from, in addition to the keeping of an emotional journal, so that you understand where you are failing, self-regulating by trying to change those overreactive spaces. That's becoming more like Christ. All of that just helps you to become more like Christ. So that the things that you see in Galatians 5:20-23 about being loving, patient, kind, gentle, all of that will become you. If you are focused, that's the vision, becoming like Christ. And this is the character of Christ, as in Galatians 5:20-23. Working on yourself, trust me, you'll see the hand of God at work.
Thank you, Adam. Sisters have gone quiet, but I'll open the floor. People have been sending me private messages, but if you want to just put your hand up and ask some questions, it will be good. Fiona, you can go.
Thank you, Sister Maya. Thank you so much for this, Uncle Adam. I'd really love to sit in the full session. When you brought up the iceberg theory, before you even spoke about our spouses, I said to myself, we may never even see, the bottom bit of the iceberg, because you can live with someone for 20, 30 years and you will never be able to actually fish out some of these things that have they have influenced their childhood or whatever it is, especially if they don't want to talk about it. My unique situation is sometimes I act in good interest, but it's misinterpreted. So in how you said we should put the spotlight back on ourselves. I was reflecting on it and I said, what I'm going to do now is explain everything I'm doing. Isn't it a bit too painful to do that, Uncle Adam? So I'm doing this. This is the reason why I'm doing this. Just to get some peace of mind, because sometimes I have the best intentions at heart and it's totally misinterpreted. And I mean, it happened recently and I was happy that he spoke, because if he hadn't spoken, he would have been walking around with misconceptions. And when I told him why I did what I did, he was apologetic, because how you described the what was it that the picture that you used, the laptop, it was a sort of that kind of scenario, yeah. And if he hadn't come up, I would have thought I acted in his best interest, but he misinterpreted it. So I said to myself, now what I'm going to do is everything I do, I have to say, I'm doing this because, but isn't it so painful to do that?
Yeah, I want you to keep the big picture. I mean, Fiona, excellent feedback. And yes, it's difficult to do these things. But, one of my favorite statements, and I keep saying you can quote me, crisis is the true test of Christian character. And if you think about it, what you have just described is exactly what the Romans 5:8 would be suggesting about God's love for us. But God demonstrated his love for us by this. Whilst we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. How much more painful is that, Fiona?
Yes,
the person is still stealing. The person is still saying that you're a useless God. You can't do anything. The person is still doing whatever it is. That is the standard that was set for us. And for many years, when I think of that verse, I start tearing up. I'm like, what kind of God is this? Because I look at people around me, and I'm that kind of person. When you're doing nonsense, it's nonsense, and these days, I think I'm tempered. When I was younger, I would say it like that. I felt like, yeah, that's righteous anger. Now I realize that, no, I missed my boat. So how can you compare to Christ dying for you when you were still stealing and fornicating and using vulgar words and doing whatever you were doing? How much more painful? The extra effort he had to go through, convert himself from God to man, be born in a manger. I think maybe we need to do a study on that. So Fiona, my understanding is that every one of us, and those of you who sat in my class, I talk about TTT-PPP. I said, look, Jesus is our training, travel, and testing manager. And the devil is our testing officer. What does Jesus do? He trains us. So each of us, he's giving us different scenarios, and it's intentional. There's nothing happening to any of us that is just coincidence. God, before the foundations of time, knew who you were going to be interacting with, and the circumstances you go through every day are designed to get a certain result. And if you don't understand that, you are missing it. You don't understand the purpose of life. You are here, God brings scenarios, and those scenarios are to bring the best out of you. It is why you have Romans 8:28. All things work together for your good. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. How can that happen? He's saying that even what seems negative, I have designed it to bring out the best out of you. It's the same reason why you have a James 1:2-4. Count it pure joy when you are going through trials of different kinds. Why would God say count it not just joy, but pure joy? When you're going through trial, he's saying that those trials, I am the one. And you see in the text, you say there's duty and doctrine. When you say count it pure joy, then he gives the doctrine. Why? It says, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you are complete and mature. The goal is that each of us will be complete and mature. The difficulty your husband is giving you, your wife is giving you, your children are giving you, you see it in the text in the context of, oh, he's not doing this and so on and so forth. But there's a bigger picture. It's the reason why when we begin to focus on God and what he wants to transform us into, we now get it right. But when we focus on that other person, we think that, oh, it's his fault, it's so and so and so forth. You miss your boat. So my take on it would be, look, your husband not hearing you and is causing you to have to explain yourself some more. Actually, it's character formation. There's a crisis and God is compelling you to have to explain yourself some more. You are becoming more Christ-like. You will find that very soon you meet somebody who needs that skill from you. He has prepared you to be able to minister to that other group or that individual better. I hope I've made some sense, but yeah.
Yes, you have.
Thank you, Uncle, for that. Thank you.
Fantastic, Fiona. Thank you so much. Yes, you have, Uncle Adam. In fact, when you were saying it, I was thinking about training our fingers for war and our hands for battle, and it was making me smile. What a fantastic Fiona we'll have at the end. It will be amazing. Sister MFA, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Okay, thank you very much. My question is that we live in a society where it's like you have to express your emotions before people understand. Everywhere, even in the labor room, you have to do drama before the nurse will understand that, oh, your baby is coming. I've delivered twice. Every time I try to, because I've prayed and I know God is in charge and everything, I try to be calm and say, nurse, my baby is coming. I can feel my baby in my waist. The baby's head is coming. They will say, no, the way you are relaxed and you are not expressing, you are not shouting, you don't look like your baby is coming. So my baby is literally falling. Then they now run and come and say, I'm panic. So because you are not doing drama, people don't take you serious. Recently, I had a situation in my house where my house help had done something very, very bad, disrespectful towards me and my mother-in-law. Mine didn't pain me like my mother-in-law's own. And I call her and I say, oh, don't do this thing again. Don't repeat it. Don't let it happen. When I tell you to do something, do it on time, blah, blah, blah. It has passed. She does the same thing just because you don't shout and you don't do all those things. So how do you get people to take you serious when you are not, because you are not doing the drama they want you to do? Like they want to see you mad and before they take you serious. How? And it becomes difficult for us Christians because I get to a point where I'm pushed so much. One day I flare up. Then after flaring up, I feel guilty because I feel I didn't live up to standard. But the person is not changing. You say something like the same thing, you have to repeat over and over. People are not taking you serious. What happens to, how do I do it so that I still get my emotional intelligence balance and I still know that I've handled this the Christian way, but I have still gotten people to like do what I want them to do and they've appreciated my point of view, not with pride that they must appreciate my point of view, but like I feel I'm also heard. We are all happy. We are all satisfied in relationships. Please, how do I do that? Thank you.
Thank you, MFA. And you were actually reliving some of those emotions as you spoke. I could hear you. I hear you. Please, I know you will not allow yourself to be distracted. Keep your eyes on the ball. Keep focused. We want to be like Jesus. And you need to understand that really, ultimately, it is about the treasures you are storing for yourself in heaven. Now, to that extent, when we are faced with a challenge that we think is not going well, don't follow the world, but go back to God for wisdom. Because different scenarios may require different situations, different solutions, case by case. And let me break that some more. James 1 verse 5. He who lacks wisdom should ask God, who gives bountifully and without reproach. Or John 14:26, but the counselor, the Holy Spirit, whom I'll send after me, will teach you all things and remind you about what I've taught you. So we have the option to go back to God. It's the reason why I said the first thing is wear your oxygen masks and focus on God. Because when you sharpen your skills of listening to God, you'll be able to diagnose much better what is going wrong around you and deal with the root issue. There's an assumption that by shouting or by screaming or by the drama would have solved the problem. No, obviously not. It is only if you go to the root point, and sometimes that root may require that house help. You need to do what I've just talked about in the iceberg theory. Get to engage and find out the background, the biases. The person may not have the same belief system as you. I've been teaching some of my people spiritual warfare and talking about how people grow up in environments where it is the norm to consult the shrine. So the way they make it in life is that when you enter a new place, you come to the shrine, they will do some things. They will see everybody in the office. They will see those whose destiny is supposed to be shining. Then they give you things to go and put on their chair, under their chair to blow into the air, and they come and do it. And for them, there's nothing wrong. They will not even see it as wrong. Okay? I was dealing with one lady. In fact, I was supposed to have been speaking to her an hour ago, but I had too many programs today. So, sitting in the World Bank in New York, and this kind of thing has happened where she comes and found some candles burning her office and a card under her chair, and someone who had been pointed out to the president of the World Bank that she's going to be the next director of this unit now is struggling to even get a job. How do you wrap your mind around that? So what I'm saying is this: you are assuming that it's just about the screaming. No. What we need is God's wisdom, because on a case-by-case basis, he's able to show us and teach us what the root is. And sometimes it's just the engagement and the quality of the engagement. So please don't be misled to think that because the world seems to suggest that if you scream, then the fact that she may not do it this time does not mean that she will not do it in other ways. But identifying the root cause, still keeping your posture as a Christian so that you are storing your treasures in heaven and getting the wisdom of God to deal with it. When you talk about the childbirth one, I would have said first thing, why do you go back to the same hospital? Find out a hospital where they actually will be responsive. And not just that. If they have a director in charge.
Two different hospitals, sorry.
Oh, there are two different hospitals. Yeah. So you need to engage and find from other people which hospitals where the people are responsive. You need to also, and sometimes it's about God, you pray about God getting for you nurses and whatnot, midwives who will actually be Christian and also responsive. But the fact is, part of this is also the change we have not initiated. So we know that something is going wrong in this hospital. You go back. I do that quite often. I go to my hospital and there's something, I'll go and tell the owner of the hospital that, please, I came here and this happened and I was not happy and so and so and so forth. If you don't address it, it affects people. And that's why we are salt and light. Sometimes it's because our salt and light, not sometimes, really, that's the problem of Ghana. That's potentially the problem of Africa. Here, 71.3%, and our salt and light is not creating any change. Light is supposed to shine on the obstacles, help everybody to go around those obstacles, point the way to the target and get us all there safely. We are not being light enough and making sure the obstacles are seen and can be removed. We are not salt either, preserving, and restoring, maintaining, So if all of us as Christians were also giving feedback and insisting that the standards of God permeate the workplace, the churches, the hospitals. So the other task I'll give you is that go and find out the Christians in the hostel. Find out whether the owner is a Christian. See how you can bring a change. Find a place where there are Christians who are sincere, hopefully that will make a difference. But I'm just saying that ultimately, don't follow the world. That will not be the solution. You want to store up treasures in heaven, keep your eyes on Jesus, but ask God for wisdom on a case-by-case basis. And you can give me a call on some of them. Let's pray about them. God is able to turn things around.
Amen. Sister Emefa, are you happy? I mean, Sandra Emefa. I think she is. Sister Frimpoma, please, you can unmute.
Yes,
And,
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome, Sandra. Sister Frimpoma, your turn now.
Hello, good evening, sisters. Mr. Anaya, good evening. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can. Uncle Adam is listening.
Yes. I mean, I joined a bit late, but I've really enjoyed the session. So Uncle Adam, God bless you. And just to support what Uncle Adam said concerning our sister Emefa's question, and Sister Emefa, just to share my experience with you and anybody who needs to hear it. I hear you as well. And the screaming, I mean, I was more of that person than maybe probably more than you are, right? And what I've come to realize, in addition to what Uncle Adam has shared, and not even in addition, in the same space, in the same light, is that the screaming and the, like you said, expressing of emotions, let me put it that way, not necessarily screaming, but the expressing of emotions in the way you put it, gets temporary results. It's from what I have experienced. And the other way, the Christ-like way, looking at it the way Christ would look at it, gets lasting results. And I just wanted to share that to support what Uncle Adam has said. I've come to realize that blowing my top and doing all of that used to work, but only temporarily. And it would happen when I was there. And yes, we could also say, yes, once it happens when I'm there, I'm okay. But then we are not emulating Christ. If we are Christians, then it's not only about us. So it's not only about the results when you are there, but if you are able to, as Uncle Adam said, do it in a way that there's a lasting result, you gain, others gain, and that shines the light of Christ. That reflects the light of Christ in us and in what we do. So I've had to learn the very hard way, and I really hear you, but I've had to learn the hard way to do things differently. And I'm pleasantly surprised that these are yielding lasting results than the other way. So I just wanted to share that as well. Thank you, sis.
And thank you so much, Frimpoma. I mean, you've allowed me to remember a very key part of it. Let me explain a little more why this approach will work. You know, ultimately, the reason why things don't work around us and people seem to do the wrong thing is because of a spiritual poverty. Let me say that again. When people repeatedly do what is wrong, intentionally seem to antagonize us, challenge us, and whatever they're doing, everybody knows is wrong. The root cause, and it is why being a Christian and knowing Christ is the ultimate solution, is a spiritual poverty. So when you are spiritually rich, you move from one level of glory to another. You are able to contain difficult situations, and people will be wondering, how did you flow through it? How did you get through it? Because Christ likeness is used, like Christ in the boat and the storm is there, and the disciples are like, don't you care for us? And he says, oh, you have little faith. Then he just stands up and he speaks to the winds and whatnot. Indirectly, he's saying that if you had faith, if all I've been training you on, you're taking it to heart, you should go to speak to these storms and the waves, and they will calm down. What is the difference? It's a spiritual poverty. So when we engage people and get to the root matter, and then we pray with them to deal with that root issue, and usually at the heart of it is receiving Christ and obeying the Bible, the thing that she's doing to antagonize you, annoy you, and so on, it stops. That's what makes the difference. There is no middle space. It's either you are in the kingdom of God, part of light, or in the kingdom of darkness, and you're being used and manipulated, period. And even for those of us in the kingdom of light, depending on what background you came from, sometimes you've carried over some of the things and you need special prayer to break those things off and deal with them and to enforce your new rights in the kingdom and allow that those yokes are gone, those chains broken. It's spiritual poverty. So if you don't understand, it's again the reason why your husband or your wife is not doing something and you are fighting them and you have not focused on the vertical so that God will show you that, look, this person comes from a family where the entire community has been given to a certain shrine. And in that shrine, the firstborns are supposed to behave this way. Secondborns are supposed to be drunkards. There are certain spirits that have been assigned. And that is the real stronghold. Because we don't understand that the devil behind the detail is something else. We are fighting the wrong person, and the situation only goes from bad to worse. The spiritual eyes are closed. It's a spiritual poverty. So don't be in a hurry to become emotionally reactive. You will not solve anything that way. Put a pause. In the detail class, I talk about the pause being a time of clarifying. Ask questions, clarify, get more information. It's like this iceberg theory. Ask more about what is going on. And then she says, oh, you see, I need these hand wet sanitizers just because so many people come into this office and leave. I feel uncomfortable. And knowing how many people go in and out, I immediately connected. But before that, we all just thought this is just a waste of money. So additional engagement, get to the bottom of it, then apply a Christ-like approach. What does the Bible say about it? How can I help? How can I pray with you? And when they see that you care, you genuinely pay attention and are willing to, some of these things will drop off.
Fantastic. And I guess, Adam, you mentioned it earlier on in a bit, putting your nose mask on as in dealing with the vertical. You said it there too. So I'm just saying that thank you for actually reiterating it again, that the vertical is the most important. Sister Dinah, I can see, okay. It wasn't, was it to ask a question? No, it wasn't. Okay. Sisters, are there any more questions? Because I am sure the more you ask, Adam has tried to condense something that he does over 6 hours into what he's done with us. And he does it with paying clients. So we are absolutely grateful that the Almighty has provided this resource for us for free. But those of you in Ghana, you can, tap into this resource and you can get him to come and speak to you personally. The rest of us can only tap into this through Zoom, and we pray that we'll get opportunities like this and even more. But it's been fantastic. But if you do have more questions, I just have to say we've got 1 minute to our 10:10 session ending, but we can go a little bit further. But if you do have more questions, please ask, because we've got him here and now, and we are just grateful to God for this opportunity. Any more questions? Right, Adam, I think on behalf of my sisters and I can only say we have immense gratitude for what you have done. And for me, the image that is still stuck in my head is that iceberg, 30% above, and it's showing on your screen still. 30%. Did you say 30%, Adam?
20 to 30% above, 70 to 80% beneath the water.
Fantastic. And 80 to 70 to 80% beneath the water, and for me, is going to help me quite a fair bit in how I deal with people, and yeah, I don't have words to say. Somebody has asked a question directly to me about how they can access you. If you can just tell me, Adam, what you want me to give to them. In that sense, I'll be grateful because I've got a message on there and I can share it.
You can share my phone number, and yeah, I mean, that number will give WhatsApp. They can call. I think it's the simplest thing. Just share my phone number.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll post that now. And one sister has also said, thank you so much. This has been enlightening, coming from a Christian perspective as well. Thank you so much, sir. God bless you. I'm going to put the phone number on now as I try and multitask. But Adam, I will say again, on behalf of my sisters, we are grateful. Sisters, if you are able to unmute, can we just pray in the spirit for a few minutes just to thank God for Adam's life? You want to say something?
Just before, I see someone sent me a personal question. Let me just try and answer.
Okay.
In the moment of making an emotionally intelligent decision, some people say count to 10. What one way do you propose, please? I think that counting is a practical way if you want to do it that way. I think that when you are self-aware of this particular scenarios, the counting to 10 is good, especially when you haven't yet identified the peculiar scenarios. But as I said, if you keep the journal, you discover that actually there are some particular things that keep tripping you. And so you can start your day by praying about it and even taking the position that I will not be tripped. I mean, even if I count to 50, I'll rather go away not saying anything or doing anything. So that you're conscious about it, whether it's your spouse or somebody else, that you've taken a new attitude. And sometimes that even is very good because it confuses your spouse. Nowadays, she's not reacting and they get frightened. Prayer is happening. So my take is that yes, it's a practical way, but more importantly, identify your triggers and just go up to God and tell him, help me today, a day by day. The first few days or weeks, you may still fail. And I've had that a lot in my sessions. People come back after a week and say, I still failed this week. And I failed that week too. And the more we call and engage, and gradually it disappears. The intentionality is what matters. Thank you so much for that question.
I think I remember something that you keep reminding us about behavior change model, Uncle Adam, which is
yes, those are all part of my slides here. I even have a Mehrabian circle where I show language and when people speak, how we draw our conclusions. There's a lot, but you can't do that in this session. I just needed to share enough for you to be able to do something and know that you can change and things can change.
Absolutely.
I trust God. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I have put his number in the chat, ladies. So if you want to grab it from there before you sign out, that would be really good. But remember, don't give up too quickly. Minimum 3 weeks and then more. So thank you so much. I was just going to say we'll pray in the spirit for a bit for Adam and his lovely wife Monica and their 2 children, and for all the work he does in the Christian kingdom, for God to strengthen him and so on. So if you're able to unmute, just unmute with me and let's just pray in the spirit for Adam for a few minutes before we bring this to a close. Father, we thank you for everything you have done this evening.